Greetings, Alpha 40 fans. Welcome to my monthly deck tech and discussion video for July 2025. In today's video, I'm going to recap the deck I ran in the monthly league for June 2025. Coincidentally, this is the same deck I ran in the month of May. If you recall, it was a red, white, pink Vise deck that I playtested in person at the Star City Games Con back in May, Minneapolis. And it did pretty well in person, but it lost all of its matches in May. I was confident in it. I just needed to pilot it a little bit better. So I ran the whole thing again in June, and it did much, much better. So in June, I won both of my league matches to move into the top 16. In the top 16, I won my top 16 match, and then did make it to the top 8. I was very close to going to the top 4. I think I lost by 1 point, 1 turn away from a fireball in game 3 in the top 8 match. Almost made to the top 4. So I'm going to make a couple changes to this deck this month and see if I can improve upon its performance for next month. If you recall, I ran 12 copies of Basic Mountain for all the red spells. It was a pretty aggressive burn deck. It splashed white for some disenchants for removal. I ran 1 copy of Plateau to give me red or white mana, and 2 basic planes for access to the white spells. The red spells, I ran 3 copies of Lightning Bolt for direct damage and getting rid of my opponent's Juggernauts. I ran 1 copy of Fork to duplicate my instance or sorcery spells. It cannot duplicate an interrupt even though it is an interrupt. So if your opponent is on blue and they have a counterspell, you can't fork the counterspell, but you can fork your Lightning Bolt, for example. And then according to page 30 of the Alpha rulebook, you can play multiple spells at the same time. They resolve at the same time. So if I tapped 3 red mana and played Lightning Bolt and forked it, I'd have 2 Lightning Bolts to which my opponent could respond with an interrupt and only counter 1 of those 2 spells. I'm running 3 Disintegrates, which is great for direct damage and removing creatures from the game. I'm also running 3 Fireballs, which is a great finisher. It's also good for removing multiple creatures. I do have a handy Fireball calculator that tells me how many mana I need to multiply for multiple targets. I use that quite often. I'm running 1 copy of Mana Flare, which doubles all the mana produced by your lands as well as your opponent's lands, so it gives them an advantage as well. I do like that later in the game when I need to Fireball or Disintegrate for a bunch. I'm running 1 copy of Wheel of Fortune that I picked up in MagicCon Las Vegas. That allows me to draw 7 cards and do damage to my opponent when I have black vices on the table. The last red spell in the deck, I'm running 3 copies of Stone Rain, which is good for land destruction and mana denial. 1 copy of Iron Star, which is one of the 6 charms that gives you life for casting red spells, or when your opponent casts red spells, you pay colorless mana, gain life. 3 copies of Black Vice, which is a key component of this deck. It's great to get out early and put pressure on your opponent to liquidate cards from their hand. I'm running 1 Soul Ring as my mana rock, plus I'm running 1 copy of Basalt Monolith. This is my pet card. It gives you 3 colorless mana. You can untap it later in the game when you have extra mana to use. It's very efficient that way. 1 copy of Howling Mine for the draw spell. However, I will make a note that for the month of July, they've updated the rules. I'll put the link in the description below of all the Alpha 40 deck building rules if you want to build your own deck and join the league. Do note that Howling Mine has moved to the restricted group. It's no longer in the draw group, so I can add one of the 4 draw cards remaining to this deck to improve its draw ability. So I'm going to keep Howling Mine in the deck. From the destruction group, you can add 1 copy of Chaos Orb, which I will keep in the deck for destruction. And then the 2 white spells are the 2 disenchants to get rid of enchantments or artifacts. A month ago, I was facing a lot of enchantments like Bad Moon. And so this month I was facing more artifacts like Juggernaut. So those are really good for removal. I like keeping those in the deck. I feel like I needed just a little bit of more creature removal in this deck. Let me recap the matches real quick and let you know how this deck did against my opponents in the month of June. My first opponent was on a red-green black Vice deck, very similar to this build. he was running Juggernaut and Shivan Dragon, so a lot of creatures, including Llanowar Elves. He had the Regrowth was his draw card. I was luckily able to Wheel of Fortune when he had a Wheel of Fortune in his hand, and Fireball for the win in Game 3. My second opponent was a local friend from Minnesota. We met up in person, which was kind of cool. He was playing a blue-green Berserk deck, very similar to the Berserk deck that I built, the Merfolk Berserk deck that I built the previous month for fun. In that matchup, I was able to fork one of my lightning bolts, which helped me answer the question of how fork works effectively in a match. I was able to win that match 2-1. We had some extra time and played some more games in person, so this deck actually went best of 5, 3-2 in a 3 of 5 setting, which is what you would need to do if you made it into the top 4 of the monthly league or the top 2 for the championship. You have to play 5 games and win 3 of those. So that helped me advance to the top 16. He did recommend that I could run a Sunglasses of Urza in this deck, so that gave me an idea to do that for later. In the top 16, I met up with an opponent from Germany. This deck actually performed pretty well against his red-green land destruction deck. The first game I won with a Fireball. The second game he channeled Fireballed me. He was running a lot of Stone Rains and Ice Storms. He also had 3 Icy Manipulators out at the same time, which was just doing damage, tapping out all my lands. I couldn't cast anything in Game 2, but Game 3 I came back and I disintegrated for the win. That put me into the top 8, in which I met up with a new opponent that I've never played before. The first game, he won the die roll, but I got lucky and had Iron Star out early. This did some heavy lifting and probably gained me about 20 life that first game, which I was able to win with a big Fireball. In the second game, he overpowered me with Juggernauts and Llanowar Elves and Hurricanes, so I lost the second game. But in the third game, it was much, much closer, very, very close. I had an explosive start with a Mountain, a Soul Ring, and a Black Vice on the first turn with 1 mana burn. He was taking damage off the Vices. I was Stone Raining his lands turn 2 and turn 3, and then I eventually Wheel of Fortune, and his 3 cards in his hand were Channel, Fireball, and Regrowth. And I thought for sure I was just going to cruise to the victory, but he came back with some Fireballs and Lightning Bolts and was able to Fireball me for the victory. I was 1 turn away, 1 point away from winning and going to the top 4, but good luck to my opponent this month. Hopefully he makes it to the championships and wins the title this month. When I think back to how this deck performed in the month of June, it could have used a little more creature removal. I faced a lot of Llanowar Elf Berserk decks, and I only had 3 Disintegrates and 3 Fireballs in the deck for creature removal. So I'm going to try, since I already have white in the deck, going to try Swords to Plowshares this month and see if I can save my Disintegrates and Fireballs for direct damage and use Swords to Plowshares when I need to on their Llanowar Elves. So I'm going to add in 2 copies of Swords to Plowshare, and I'm going to take out 2 Stone Rains actually. I thought Stone Rain is good if you can get it on turn 1, but you need 3 mana to cast it. So ideally, you'd need a Mountain and a Soul Ring on turn 1 and be able to cast this on turn 2. But if they're playing Forest and Llanowar Elf, they're already going to have access to green mana. So there are ways of playing around the Stone Rain. So I think I'm going to try doing less of the land destruction and go more of the burn this month and just burn, baby, burn with the 2 Swords of Plowshares. And my opponent from Minnesota who gave me the idea to play the Sunglasses of Urza, I'm going to take him up on that suggestion. It is the right call for this deck. So I picked up 1 copy of Sunglasses of Urza. This is a rare artifact from the alpha set. There's 1,100 copies of this printed. It costs 3 colorless mana. White mana in your mana pool can either be used as white or red mana. So it turns all of your plains into plateaus. That is pretty neat. So I'm going to put that in the deck as well and take out the last Stone Rain for that. And then to equalize the mana base to make the planes a little more accessible and easier to cast, I'm going to put in 2 copies of basic planes. So I'll have 4 planes plus the plateau, and I'll take out 2 of the basic mountains, which will give me 10 basic mountains, 1 plateau, 4 basic planes for 15 lands. It's just shy of 40%. I think it's 36% or 37.5% of the deck will be lands, but I'm also running the Soul Ring and the Basalt Monolith plus the Mana Flare, which actually gives me access to a ton of mana if I need it later in the game. So this is the mana base, 15 lands plus the old Sunglasses of Urza. That's the 40 cards, but since they have changed Howling Mine to be restricted, so I can play actually another card from the draw group. I thought about Regrowth, but I'd need to splash green. I thought about Brain Geyser, but I'd need to splash blue. Thought about Demonic Tutor, but I have to splash black. So I think the JMD Tome makes sense in this deck for card advantage. I'm going to add it as a 41st card in this deck, just in case I Wheel of Fortune myself or I'm drawing more cards than my opponent. I don't want to deck myself. I want to be ahead of the card count. So I'm going to try just throwing that in as the 41st card in the deck. We'll see how that does for the month of July. I'll report back at the end of the month, let you know how it does. Let me know in the comments below how you think it'll do. Give this video a like if you enjoy Alpha 40 and my monthly Alpha 40 deck tech videos. Thanks for watching. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I'll see you next month with another Alpha 40 deck tech. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.